Circuit Court is now in session with the Honorable Brian K. Kirkham presiding, calling case 2021-776 DM Chelsea Joswiak versus Ryan Joswiak. Today is Monday, December 9th, 2024 at 9:27 a.m.
Court will note the appearance of Ms. Henderson appearing on behalf of the defendant. This matter is before the court on the defendant's second motion to hold plaintiff in contempt for attorney fees and evidentiary hearing. And Ms. Henderson, I note that the plaintiff has filed an objection. It's my understanding we were going to take that up today as well.
If that's okay with your honor, it makes sense to just address it all at the same time.
That's fine with me as long as you don't have an objection.
I don't have an objection, your honor.
Okay, Ms. Henderson, you can proceed with your motion.
Thank you, your honor. And we understand the court is probably not going to render any decision on our motion today. The main thing that we're seeking out of today's hearing is an evidentiary hearing to address the issues. But essentially, the court is aware that this is a contentious matter. We had to file a motion for plaintiff to provide to my client passcodes to the children's phones to monitor their activity on the phones as recommended by Ms. Katz, who was the assigned counselor for the family at that time. The court ordered Ms. Joswiak to provide those codes, and upon receiving the codes and beginning monitoring, my client has discovered some concerning messages that were under deleted messages, and they were between the minor child Kinsey and plaintiff, and essentially they were aimed at coaching the child to behave a certain way, with the defendant to not participate in activities when she is with a defendant, or to thank her brother for having to do those activities because he's enjoying them, and things of that nature. So as soon as my client discovered those messages, he immediately contacted Ms. Katz. Ms. Katz reviewed those messages, was very concerned. And in Exhibit A, she wrote a letter to my client addressing those concerns, as well as some other behaviors that were not in the best interest of the minor children that were occurring at plaintiff's home. One of those was plaintiff's significant other, who is a teacher at the school that the older child is attending, turning in the paper to Kinsey with the first letter of this significant other's last name on it rather than Kinsey's last name. Again, so things that would essentially alienate the minor children from my client and cause them to be feeling like they're torn or have to pick sides rather than enjoying their parenting time at both homes. Previously, this court held that if my client has to come to court again to seek contempt for plaintiff, the court would consider previously reserved attorney's fees. And at this point, based on the letter that was provided by Ms. Katz, who will testify at the evidentiary hearing, we are concerned that parenting time with plaintiff may be harmful for the minor children. So we're asking for the court to order an evidentiary hearing to consider that, as well as the attorney's fees for this motion and previously reserved attorney's fees, and address all of that at the same time, Your Honor. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Joswiak, what's your response?
On November 6th, I received an email with this letter from Ms. Katz. It was addressed to myself, not the defendant. And the letter he was CC'd in the email along with Ms. Henderson, but it was addressed to myself. And it stated that she was very concerned. This was of very concerning nature, parental alienation and such. However, Ms. Katz sat on this information for 13 days. If this was very detrimental to Kinsey or Ryder, why wasn't it addressed immediately with myself? I would think that would need to be taken care of via email, a phone call, a meeting, but it wasn't. It sat for 13 days. And then I received the letter. I was given 2 days to come up with solutions. I responded to Ms. Katz immediately with solutions. such as talking to the kids' counselor, Liz, talking to my own counselor about what to do. Mary Dessa thanked me and asked for a Zoom meeting. We did that. It went well. She wanted another Zoom meeting where essentially Ryan, the defendant, and I argued the entire meeting. It then ended in Mary Dessa quitting. And then I received this motion afterwards, after complying with what I was asked to do once again. There was a motion entered, and it was requested that by Mary Dessa. I believe that isn't a personal vendetta, and it has nothing to do with Ryan, myself, and the children. It has to do with Mary Dessa and me and our continuous issues. I do not believe an evidentiary hearing is needed. I'm no longer working with Miss Katz. We will now be transferring to Miss Hunter. I have filled out the forms and looked over her paperwork. She has lots of safeguards in place. I think that this is going to go very differently than it did the first time. And I think suspending parenting time in this case is extreme. And there is already modification in place due to the evidentiary hearing in July. Ryan has 5 days, I have 3. So I don't believe that it's necessary. I don't think, actually, I attached a certificate of a parenting course I took in July after the first evidentiary hearing. I have initiated co-parenting counseling with a new counselor. And I don't believe that I need to pay for that, as it's each person should pay for their own fees. And lastly, as far as paying for attorney fees today, it seems kind of foolish when the motion was written incorrectly, as it says to hold the plaintiff in contempt and request for immediate resumption of parenting time. That's from July. And it also has the children's ages incorrect, but the defendant signed his name to that. I believe that should be his responsibility.
Okay, well, I'm not going to ignore attorney fees just because ages are incorrect in a document. I mean, that is ridiculous. So that doesn't sway the court in any way. What's your objection to the order, ma'am?
I felt that there needed to be some clarification. I listened to our hearing several times, and I was under the impression that Miss Henderson, when she said, Your Honor, did you still want Miss Katz to render recommendations? I thought she was referring to recommendations overall, not recommendations on a counselor, as it was already established. We both agreed. And so I thought that would appear in the order, because it is written that way in the original document. It says that parties and minor children shall continue counseling with Mary Dessa Katz and follow all of her recommendations. And I just thought it would reflect that we would no longer be doing that in the new order.
Okay. Ms. Henderson, what's your response?
Sure, Your Honor. Again, I submit that the order that was proposed to this court for signature is in full compliance with Your Honor's ruling, as well as with the Register of Actions. When I asked about your recommendations, that was in relation to your ruling that Ms. Katz would render recommendations as to the new co-parenting counselor, since the parties on the record agreed. I asked Your Honor, did you still want me to include that she would render recommendations as to the co-parenting counselor? And you said no, because they agreed. So we will proceed with Ms. Hunter. So I submit the order is in full compliance with Your Honor's ruling, as well as with the Register of Actions. And since defendant and the minor children, if able and willing, are continuing working with Mary Dessa Katz on an individual basis, it's obvious that she may render recommendations as to them. in relation to a brief response to Ms. Joswiak's response to my motion, Ms. Katz actually contacted me and stated that as a result of the second meeting of the parties, court needs to get involved and consider all evidence at an evidentiary hearing, given the contemptuous and egregious behavior of plaintiff during the meeting of the parties, as well as the messages that were exchanged. And further, Your Honor, as it relates to the 13 days, if the court reads the letter from Meredith Katz, she actually references that, hey, I started writing this letter to you a certain number of days ago, and as the time went by, there's more issues that came up. So I'm including them in this letter and addressing them all at the same time. So it's not that the issues brought up by Ms. Katz were not important. It's that they were so complex and so multiple in nature that Ms. Katz addressed them all at the same time. And she was in full contact with myself and Mr. Joswiak during preparation of that letter and essentially deciding whether the court needs to be involved. We are maintaining that the court needs to have an evidentiary hearing on the issues of parenting time. As it relates to the modification that Ms. Joswiak is referencing, that's actually my client's makeup parenting time that resulted from her denial of parenting time previously. So it's not a modification of parenting time per se. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, what the court's going to do is the court does believe there's sufficient allegations in the petition and the other pleadings, the responses from Ms. Katz as well, to have an evidentiary hearing. The court is going to schedule an in-person evidentiary hearing. So when the notice goes out, the parties are going to have to appear in court. It will not be by Zoom. Until that time, court would order that the parties would continue to participate in co-parenting classes. That's being done now with Ms. Hunter. Is that correct?
That is correct, Your Honor.
Okay. The court will at this point, the court will order that the parties would each pay 1/2 of the cost of that, subject to later apportionment after I have a hearing and I'm able to hear all of the evidence. So, and the court will again reserve attorney fees. We'll address that at the time of the evidentiary hearing.
Thank you, Your Honor.
That will be the order. I will enter the order as submitted by Ms. Henderson, as I do believe that is proper and appropriate. And otherwise, Ms. Henderson, you can prepare a order from today's hearing.
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you.
Okay.
And your office will contact to schedule the hearing?
Yep, we will do that.
Thank you very much. Have a
Thank
good
you.
day.
Have a good day.
Thank you.